director with Secure Community Network. I've been with SCN for close to 5 years. I spent 30 years in law enforcement and retired as a police chief and a divisional commander of a fairly large sheriff's office down near Portland, Oregon. So I'm based out of Portland. SCN breaks the country down based on loosely on FEMA regions. So I have FEMA Region 10, which is Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Alaska, and Utah. So I work in a variety of capacities, working with communities, Jewish communities within my region, especially, but also even more broadly than that, the interfaith community. So I know Diane and I had an opportunity to speak earlier. Audrey, I didn't know you were going to be on. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. Great. But it's so very important that we are working with all of our community members, not just a single community group, because these hate crimes, these hate actors, they may have specific targets in mind, but oftentimes they're opportunists, and they will spread their hate through violence wherever they can. So it's really important that we work together in that capacity, not only within the Jewish community, but the interfaith community as a whole. So with that, I will mute and pass it to Diane and Audrey.
First of all, thank you all for watching the screening. Every time I hear that last song in the end of the movie, it just brings a tear to my eye because it's such a beautiful song. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Trish and her team did an excellent job, but very excited to be here on the panel today. I lost my two brothers that I was sandwiched between. My older brother at the time was 59. I was 57, and my younger brother was 54. And we have a younger sister who's 9 years younger than me. So my parents lost 2 of their 4 children during the 1027 synagogue attack. And I'm happy to be on the call today to answer any questions that any of you may have. Audrey, I'll turn it over to you. It's so good to see you, by the way.
Thank you. It's good to see you both as well. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being at the screening. And you all know way too much about me at this point already. You don't need me to talk anymore.
Well, thank you, all 3 of you. And for anyone on the call that may not know too much about Meaningful Movies, just to kind of set the groundwork, their Meaningful Movies project has been around for about 20 years, and we've been out here in the Northwest, Tacoma and Gig Harbor specifically, since 2016. And every month we are hosting 1 to 3 screenings in which we show documentary film around topics and social issues just like these of great importance that we want to bring community together around, to inform, to advocate, and most importantly, have these important and safe community conversations that can open hearts and minds and make change. So it's just, thank you to you guys in this film for really being a catalyst for this conversation today. And Diane, I would love to turn it over to you. I've made you the host.
Okay.
And if we want to go ahead and just, get the conversation started, I guess I want to let folks know that are with you, Diane, that they can ask those questions and or give those comments right through you. And for all of our folks joining virtually, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to join in on the conversation and ask a question, or you can type in just the general chat box, which everyone can see. And with that, Diane, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. And thank you all too from our group here at Frank Toby Jones in Tacoma, Washington. And I don't see anybody with a chat question, but let me ask this room. Does somebody have a question they'd like to ask?
Just a comment that I noted an imam at a mosque in New Jersey, I believe it was shot, and I don't know if killed or not this morning. That this is all terrible, but to me, I was also on this film because I'm embedded for peace. But to me, the point of it was that the community came together after tragedy. And I would like our community to come together before a tragedy, that make friends with our Muslim brothers and sisters, Latinos, Blacks. We have so many minority groups that have been subject to similar crimes. But to me, the power of the film was identifying the people as individuals and understanding them and what they and their families went through. I really praise the people that put this together. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a comment on that, perhaps?
So maybe Audrey and or Diane can both comment about just the resiliency, right, of you know, working through this kind of horrific event to the question or statement posed. And I think that's that'd be great.
So if I may, here in Pittsburgh, we had a prior relationship with among the communities. Tree of Life congregation itself in 1906 or 07 had a relationship with the Catholic Church. And we've had coming and going. We had a relationship with the Catholic Church in the 70s and 80s as well. But also other organizations. Wasi Muhammad had a couple months prior to the shooting given a sermon at another local synagogue. We were cross enjoying each other in many ways. We had been involved with multi-faith services. We just do this in Pittsburgh. So it was not an unusual thing that we already knew each other. But yes, you're right. We did come together after the fact. And in fact, the ability to join together with other people around the world was a blessing in the midst of all this tragedy. And it was a good thing. Yes, you're right. We should do it more often when it isn't a tragedy.
Did you have a comment, Diane? You're muted.
I agree with everything Audrey said. And my suggestion to your community, whoever just made that comment, is start to work on those relationships now. Start to get ready. And Audrey and I have said this over as, you know, other families, members of victims and survivors. Everyone thinks it can't happen to them, and you're out at the grocery store, or you're at the library, or you're in. My daughter was in supermarket, had just left there before the shooting out in Colorado. I mean, and everyone says lightning can't strike twice. It can. So all I'm saying is be prepared, be aware of your surroundings, understand what's going on. I think what the Secure Community Network is doing are some great things. And I'll turn it over to Jean in just a minute. In terms of preparedness, and we just, in our world right now, I have two daughters in college, one down at Tulane in New Orleans and one out in Boulder, Colorado. And I'm constantly telling them, look for the exit signs when you get into a room or into a theater, just little things like that. And I think it's so ingrained, and they're always like, Mom, it's not going to happen again. And I'm like, honey, you have no idea what's going to happen. Just be prepared. And I agree with Audrey with the interfaith. I don't live in Pittsburgh any longer. I live in Chicago. I made my family life out here, but I go back to Pittsburgh quite frequently. But our synagogue is a Reformed temple out in the western suburbs. So we're not in the city, and we're not in the north suburbs or Skokie, Illinois, where there are a high percentage of Jewish people. So there's maybe 20 Jews in our community. All of my friends are not Jewish. I educate them all the time. They ask questions. You know, don't be afraid to share your faith and your beliefs. As long as you're not pushing it on people, I think it's widely accepted. So I'm going to turn it over to Jean, but I just wanted to add those few comments.
We're going to let Iris comment. Would you like to comment, Iris?
Sure. Thank you so much. First of all, I may start crying. An incredibly powerful movie. Thank you, Diane and Audrey, for being here. And the documentary had everything about life, right? It had love and care and family and hate and grief and loss. And then, you know, what do you do after this? And how do you come together? And I didn't remember some of the details. I didn't remember that there were 3 congregations there. Actually, I might not even have known that while I was reading about it 5 years ago. Nor did I remember that the Muslim group raised that money, you know, for the funerals. And also I was struck by and I'm terrible with names, the nurse who was injured and who recovered.
Dan
Reggie
Legger.
Dan.
here. You know, his wanting to forgive, you know, rather in the same way that the congregation in Charleston, you know, worked that. And then some of the folks, and I don't remember if it was you, Audrey, my memory kind of sucks. But there was somebody who, you know, who said that the shooter, you know, isn't human and is an animal, and I will never forgive, and that kind of thing. And I just think it's very interesting to, anyway, there were a couple of other things that have slipped my mind. Thank you so much for giving me the time. And again, thank you for being here. I guess one other quickie is that, you know, in this time of the war that's going on in the Middle East, I have family in Israel and an Israeli niece who's lived in this country for 20 years. And I kind of practice Buddhist stuff. So even though I'm Jewish from Brooklyn, I'm not a practicing Jew. So there's too much hate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
There
you,
are
Iris.
probably more people who love than people who hate. If you look for it, you can find the hate, but if you look for the love, you can find more of it.
This is Diane in Tacoma, and I do have a question. I saw on the closing credits that the perpetrator was due to go to trial in 2023. Has that already been done?
Yes, it has. The trial occurred over a period of 3 months this summer, from May through the beginning of August. And it was an unbelievable experience. I don't know what adjectives to use to even describe it, but the families and the survivors had the opportunity to spend a good close to 10 to 12 weeks with each other in the courtroom, in the family room, in the courthouse. It was unbelievable. So we got to know all of the survivors, the family members did, and we got to understand their relationship with all of the victims that we lost, like my 2 brothers. I got to know that Audrey and my younger brother David would hold hands, or she'd help him find the page numbers. I had never met Audrey before. We learned a lot about each other and each other's families during the trial, and we got a really good legal education. But what was so incredible to me was the kindness that we received coming into the courthouse from the prosecutors, from even the defense team, although I don't want to speak of them. But the courthouse was just, we felt safe there. I mean, in terms of being able to be together, and they gave us a separate room called a family room where we were able to sit and be comfortable and have a drink of water or soda or food if we were hungry and weren't actually in the courtroom. But going through day by day, being in that courtroom was excruciating at times. And many of us excused ourselves during some of the more vivid recollections of the event. But it was a time for us to get together, and by the time the trial was over, the verdict, he was found guilty on all 63 counts. And then he was found guilty to be tried for a sentence of life at the very end. So there were actually 3 phases of the trial. So it was long and it was hard, but a lot of people cried out before and wrote and talked about the fact, don't put these families or survivors through this experience. I have to tell you, we walked out of there, and I'm not going to speak for Audrey, I'll let her speak in just a second, but I walked out of there feeling ecstatic, like a big weight had been lifted off mine and my sisters and my parents' chests. And every day I would get on the phone with my dad and my mom. They were down in Florida because they couldn't make the trip. And he would ask me, well, what did they say and what did they do? And our prosecution team was incredible, but they spent so much care and tenderness and empathy with the families and the survivors. We couldn't have asked for a better experience. Audrey, I'll turn it to you.
The bad guy was sentenced to death, and he's being held in Terre Haute on death row and pending his appeal. So that's what happens. The things that people say ahead of this kind of trial may or may not be coming from people who were involved directly with it, and it gets magnified. Those who were witnesses, like I was, couldn't talk about any of it beforehand. So we couldn't stand up and give an opinion. Yes, we should have a trial. Yes, he should be sentenced to death, whatever, because that could taint our testimony. So we had to be quiet and listen to everybody else speaking for us. And just as Diane says, yes, the trial was, if we hadn't had the trial, we wouldn't have known the scope of the hatred and the scope of exactly how ingrained the hate was in the bad guy, and how he came to it over a long period of time, and all the other details that you don't want to know would not have come out without that trial. We would have swept him under the rug, and he would have taken a plea deal to be sentenced to life in prison, and he would have been housed in a prison with the chance to have reduced level of detainment, and reduced, possibly to be moved to a less secure prison based on his good behavior. He would have had different, and that testimony too came out in the trial, what the prisons are like. Where he is now, he's severely restricted, and there's no chance of improving his housing conditions. So all of these things add up to, it was a good thing to have this trial. And those who said, don't put the families through it, I can't speak for the families because I don't know. I didn't lose a family member. But I can speak for those of us who were there. Most of us, not all, but most, think that it was a good thing to have the trial, and we're glad we got to participate and glad we got to testify.
Anybody want to? I don't want to hog the airwaves.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Oh, I was just asking my room
Oh, okay.
here in physically if they had a question. But please, Jane, if you've got some comments, we'd love to hear them.
Well, I mean, the stars of the show are Diane and Audrey, Diane. So I would defer to them for their comments, but they have said a couple things that not knowing all of our audience this afternoon. Iris, thank you. I know a little bit more about you and your background now, but it's really important, no matter where you're from, where you worship, where you plan on going, that a couple of key things that have been spoken about, it's good to just reaffirm. One, it's important for us to be prepared, right? A preparation is key. in my law enforcement career, as reactive, unfortunately, as law enforcement has to be to respond to an incident, oftentimes when you're in a leadership role, you're trying to do things to be proactive, right? We wanted to prevent criminal activity, criminal behavior as best we could. It's the same thing with all of us. We should be proactive and try to be prepared as best we can so that perhaps we're able to avoid an incident by exercising good situational awareness, spatial awareness, and receiving some training, whether it's Secure Community Network or the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle has a security director. If you are Jewish, you can be in that space. Relying on your local law enforcement, or heck, it could be your fire department or EMS just for first aid training, right? So seeking those training courses that can help us be prepared is really important. If you have, a house of worship, or even where we all work, think about where you work if you're still working, and do you have an emergency procedure, right? What if somebody has a medical emergency in front of us? Do we have procedures that we can follow to try and help that person, right? So all of these things, I think, are really important for us to reflect on when it comes to that preparation mode, where we want to be, preventative in not hopefully having to go through a negative incident, whether it be the ultimate, like we're talking about this afternoon, or something even less catastrophic. So Diane, back to you.
Oh, this Diane.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Tacoma Diane. How's that?
Tacoma Diane. Here in Tacoma, we have there are a lot of people working on gun legislation. So I was just wondering about the families that are involved in all this, if there has been any kind of redoubling of efforts to minimize, stop the use of these high-powered guns with these really these AR-15 type rifles that are so disastrous when people get their hands on them. Any comment on the gun issue? That seems to be at the core of this.
I can start out, Audrey, but I think just like we went into the trial, some of us thinking we want him put to death, and others thinking we can't put an individual to death, we want him to be sentenced to life in prison. I think the families do differ in terms of gun legislation and how it is handled in Pittsburgh and across the country. Our focus, I can share with you my family's focus, and our family focus is more on the mental health issue as opposed to gun legislation. But some of the families differ. So I would have to say, without speaking for anyone else, that our family really is much more focused on trying to get the root of it in mental health and education and awareness. This film that was produced, I think, is a great education tool for something like the Security Community Network in terms of readiness and preparation, and also educating people that it can happen in their community. And these are individuals that were going about their life, and all 11 congregants went into synagogue that morning with the hope of praying together, all 3 synagogues. So I think we all differ in that respect, is what I'd say. Audrey, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Exactly as you say. The film included all of these things because Trish is a great filmmaker. It included all the possible perspectives that you can look at this whole matter, and you can draw your own conclusions and decide what part of this each individual wants to work on. Before the trial, we lost 2 people who would have been testifying. one of them a very liberal person and one of them very conservative person. And the one thing that they agreed on was the shooter should be tried to the death penalty. But besides that, they didn't agree on very much. But they stood together regardless, disregardless, as one of them would have said. So, you know, take your stand where you see it, and will remain a solid worldwide community. As Jean said, learn what to do in this kind of situation, because had I not had the training, I don't know that I would have done the right thing. And if you only know run, hide, fight in that order, run if you can away from what's going on, hide if you can't run, and if your back is to the wall, fight. It's good to take the training to learn how to fight if that should happen. Then you're prepared. And as Jean said, know where the exits are and be ready to go.
Yeah.
Besides that, we're all in this together.
That's right. Okay, we're gonna wind up here in a few minutes, so I just want to. Oh, is there a chat? Oh, I see. Hold on just a moment. Someone may have a question for us. Is this from Iris again? Jean, what do you think about the gun owner who opened the shop in the abandoned synagogue, which seemed kind of awful to me, who said he thinks more people should be armed? This seems like a very wrong direction. What do you think?
Yeah, that's, that's thank you for the question, Iris. I like Brad, and I'm sure you all heard Brad Orsini in the documentary. He is a retiree from the FBI and in the United States Marine Corps. And he, like I, have spent our adult careers and then some around firearms. But I am a huge proponent, Iris, that, just because someone has a firearm, doesn't mean that that's going to solve a problem, right? It's much more than just having a firearm. For that gun owner to say, well, the world would be a better place, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, if everyone was armed, or a safer place, I think is silly. There are a lot of people out there that may lawfully possess a firearm that may not possess the capacity to have to use it as a force option tool. So I think that's I've heard gun store owners make those kind of statements before. I think they're kind of a bravado statement. I don't agree with them as such. So thanks for the question, though.
Okay, last questions before we close. Anyone else have something? Art? Oh, okay. Art's go ahead. You go ahead, and then I'll have Art ask.
Well, I think the more exposure this film presents is critical looking forward. So
To be louder, these people can't
oh,
hear you.
I'm sorry. We need to know, especially the question is, how do we obviously requires these folks real time.
Yeah,
Really
that's right.
takes some training.
Yes, it does. That's right.
I would appreciate it. Always asking Jen, so terrific.
Do it again. Can you hear our guests? He's saying he would just like to see this film repeated so that other people have the chance to see it. Yeah.
HBO/Max.
Oh, good. HBO/Max. That's great. So we can tell our friends. Right, and we have it, we're showing it again on January 24th here in Tacoma.
I talked to I had
Uh-huh.
Sure. See this. See it. Students.
Mhm. All right. We'll help you with that. We'll help you with that. His daughter's a cantor down near LA, and he's talked with her about the film as well. And so they may also be interested in showing it, so. Yeah.
If there are any referrals, I don't know how you got a hold of this, if that would go directly through Trish and her team or through through Jean. But we've been going out and talking with a number of different people at different venues, whether they be synagogues, whether they be schools, on awareness, readiness, on what happened, and they have been showing the screenings. So if you know of a synagogue or a venue that is interested, please direct them through whatever vehicle you used.
Yeah, absolutely. We will. We will do that. All right. So if, yes, Art, I'm sorry.
So one of the many striking things about the film was the Islamic Center response guy who was talking about contributing monies and stuff. It struck me that here in Tacoma, we've had an Islamic center that was burned about quite a few years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, presumably arson. And the damage was such that they're still not been able to repair it or restore it. The community was very supportive of it, and they found alternative places, but nevertheless, the center itself is still not repaired. There also are, I know from the perspective of the Asian community, that there have been incidents where there have been threats, things that have occurred, and yet because police in part and 911 are so limited in response and there's such a shortage of police that basically things tend to be poo-pooed and just kind of ignored, saying, oh, well, if there's a real problem, we'll respond to it, but don't bother us. We can't deal with these minor threats and things. How do we as a community respond to things like this?
So if I understand the question, and I'll take first shot at trying to answer it. Yeah, when you have law enforcement that is unresponsive, either they are inundated with what's considered to be a priority one life safety call, and maybe they're unable to respond to it might be a priority for us that we want law enforcement there, but they may not be able to get someone there in a timely fashion. Please continue to call that dispatch center and or request that they at least take an online report, a telephonic report from you. We know that when there is hate crimes, I won't say any, but a lot of criminal activity is underreported, especially hate crimes. So please make sure as best you can, you're getting that police agency to at least take a report if it's over the phone, so that it's documented. You can also go to Secure Community Network, works with all the college campuses, and the Anti-Defamation League to put a report campus hate document out there. So all of our college students, whether they're Jewish or Christian or fill in the blank, they all, as college students, are able to access this and report a variety of different hate crimes. That goes to us. We then disseminate it to a local law enforcement. You can also go to the Secure Community Network website or the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle. They also have an online report.
Yeah.
We're not law enforcement, okay? I used to be, but I'm not anymore. I've done my time. But we make sure that we get that information to the appropriate law enforcement agency. So I know it can be very frustrating, believe me, but please try to continue as best you can to make those reports so that it can be documented. I
Yeah.
hope that helps. Sorry, it's not a perfect answer.
So did I hear that the Islamic Center suffered damage and the Jewish community didn't step up and raise money right away?
Well, we don't know that for sure.
We got to get you guys together.
Right. It's possible that they did benefit from the local Jewish community, though. I think a sad thing I encountered when I went to an event at our synagogue here in Tacoma is that they were installing bulletproof glass in the front of the synagogue, and that they have security at every event. They have to have security. I thought that was sad.
Oh,
That
it's a
is
good thing.
common. It is, and it's common. And I guess to comment on that, I know Diane and I were talking about that earlier today. It's really important that, we do our very best to work with our Jewish community organizations to keep them safe through target hardening, access control, training, etc. But what we don't want is we don't want a potential perpetrator to then just go down the half a block or 2 blocks and target a Catholic church that has wide open doors with no security. So it's really important, folks, that we find that balance on how to keep all of our community members as safe as we can, especially when it comes to, that interfaith communities. We all want to be open and welcoming, right? For those that want to come in for prayer service, no matter what the denomination. But we also have to be mindful that it's a different world, and we need to exercise our due diligence to be cautious.
Now, I was going to just add to that relationship between the organization that's looking for was to develop the contacts with the FBI and several other major places where information that average person never hears of coming in.
Mhm.
And if you can be aware that these are reports, or, they filter it and share it.
And share it. That's the important thing, isn't it? Did you hear that comment?
If you could repeat it, that'd be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
the gentleman said that we need to have those connections with the organizations like the police departments and the FBI to see if those reports are coming in so that people are aware of them, to share it. And I know that our Tacoma Police Department has now a website that's sharing crime information. So that is a good thing to work on. So, and yes, sir. Yes.
I'd just like to comment, David and the Cecils were the biggest impact on me. They were special, and they lived long lives, same age as I am. And at the end of their lives, when people came to their funerals, and they were blessed and they were cherished. They were in a very tiny town of less than 1,000 people, and I remember as a child, we had a guy in our class, Johnny, I'll call him. We never really excluded Johnny, but we didn't include Johnny. And over the years, he got married, he had a wife, and just a beautiful gal. He was always into guns and hunting, and he was always a loner. It seems like a lot of the people that do these kind of shootings and things, they're loners, they're, whatever we want to call them. I regret now having not spent more time as a child giving Johnny the positive strokes that we all gave each other. I think that that's something we can all do, and the big message in our country right now is concentrate on every individual is blessed, he's a child of God, that we should always include people that are, maybe they're not the football hero or the cheerleader, but everybody needs to be cherished a little bit. We need to spread that around, and I've always said, in America, I don't care what flavor of religion you are, as long as you've got a taste. And I think that goes a long way. And everybody has
their own beliefs, but let's be inclusive and kind to one another. Just, that's my statement.
That's a great line to end on, isn't it? I would just like to mirror Angela's comments at the beginning and say how much we appreciate your being here, and the film itself was absolutely extraordinary. And if we haven't said it, we also want to offer condolences and for all the people that were lost in that tragedy or hurt. That's right. And because I know it's something that is never forgotten. Not as long as you live will you ever forget the loss of that incident. So again, we want to thank you all, and thank you for those people who came in online today for this meaningful movie. And we wish you great prosperity and good luck this coming year. See you next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Diane in Tacoma, are you able to email me a link to the recording for this afternoon?
Angela will have that.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
I'll
Great.
make sure I'll text her and let her know that you want that.
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yes, thank you all.
All righty. Have a
Okay.
great afternoon.
Hey, enjoy Chicago, my old hometown.
I will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.